Hello, my name is Aaron Cavanagh and I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Post-Burnout.com. Post-Burnout.com is a culture website dedicated to venerating burnt-out artists the world over. This is our website's podcast where we publish full-length recordings of our interviews, which are sometimes the unedited versions of our site's articles and at other times are exclusives. If you're a returning listener, thank you for coming back, and if this is your first time listening, thank you for checking us out. We hope you enjoy and consider subscribing, giving the episodes a thumbs up if you're on YouTube, or giving it a rating if you're anywhere else. It really helps us out. Thank you. In this edition of PostBurnout.com interviews, we talk with musician and journalist Hayley Crusher Kane of the Californian punk-inspired pop band Hayley and the Crushers. Hayley discusses the band's upcoming EP, Unsubscribed from the Underground, signing with the label Kitten Robot Records and her time there, meeting her husband and bandmate Dr. Reed Kane Esquire in the country band, the recent move from San Luis Obispo to Detroit and how the two scenes differ, her love of punk music, and much more.
Hi,
Hi, Ellie. Can you hear me okay?
how's it going?
Hi, I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Is this gonna be recorded video wise?
No, I'm recording it just for myself, but I won't be releasing the video.
Okay. Just so you know, it's really humid here, so I have a bunch of fans on. So I was just
Okay.
asking because it's gonna be like really like you can hear them going probably.
No, it's fine. The
Okay.
audio sounds clear to me.
Oh,
Um,
good. Okay.
well,
Good.
it's very nice to meet you. I mean, I have a kind of a lot to sort of go on it just in terms of a starting point. I mean, I guess like one thing that I was kind of sort of interested in was kind of a bit about your background. I mean, your musical background. My understanding is that it was your mother's CD of Go-Go's music, which kind of kickstarted your interest in music and in I guess performing as well. And you actually met your husband in a country band, if I'm correct. Is all that
Mhm.
so far accurate?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of a big jump from there to there,
Yeah,
but
yeah. I'm sure
I
there's stuff in the
it
middle.
was like in the early 90s, I guess it was, it was like oldies radio, K Earth 101 in Southern California. And so it was a lot of oldies. And then my mom had a really cool collection. She's since been kind of annoyed that I always bring up the Go-Go's because she's like, I had so many other things too. There was Elvis Costello and all this other stuff. I'm like, it's not about your taste in music. That's just the one that, really made me want to sing into a hairbrush, but
Yeah.
in front of the mirror. But yeah, definitely. Like I think just stumbling upon all of that great pop music that was a little bit before my time,
Mhm.
definitely before my time. It had already happened by the time I was a teenager. Punk was gone and the time of the Go-Go's was gone by the time I was a little kid. So yeah. And also oldies, I feel like more I think about it, like it was just always on and, just having all those great pop hooks around, you
Yeah.
know. And then my husband, yes, that's true. To answer your question, not to get too far into it if we're not going that far into the future, but yeah, I was playing banjo in a bluegrass band around 2011,
Mhm.
12, and he was playing in his band Red Eye Junction, which still has quite a pretty healthy presence on Spotify today, which I really find annoying. And that's his country band. And we became collaborators in country music, and from there, started doing other things.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are correct.
Well, I was interested in kind of your love for new wave and kind of your implementation of new wave music, because I know you were simultaneously also very influenced by kind of the West Coast punk bands from the late 70s and early 80s, bands like X and the Bags and Black Flag and so on. And it's interesting, like if you watch like The Decline of Western Civilization or a documentary like that, at the
Yeah.
time there was like such disdain for like new wave amongst punkers at the time. I was wondering, like, when you kind of like look back at that, because it's an interesting period when you kind of think about like 77 punk. I mean, by the time like a lot of bands like, for example, Sex Pistols or The Clash were kind of getting their records out. I mean, already you had bands like Television releasing Marquee Moon, and you had Wire releasing Pink Flag, and it was like already we're kind of like expanding this like in such a quick amount of time. We already, then it splintered off into post punk and new wave and gothic, and just it went in very various different
Right.
avenues. I was wondering, what do you think of I guess the kind of the punk rock infighting?
Well, I think just to clarify, I mean, I definitely feel spiritually aligned to like a new wave mentality and bands and the colors, the camp, and some of the uh I guess performance elements being wacky, but I never consciously felt like that I was attaching myself to any one punk culture subculture.
Mhm.
So I think like a lot of kids that grew up in the 90s, I guess now we're in the mid to late 90s, when I first got into punk rock, there was a lot of like streaming, like illegal streaming. I don't know if you remember that, but there was
Yeah,
like a lot of like
Napster.
LimeWire, whatever. You know, talking about torrents, like illegal torrents. And my
Yeah.
dad, both my parents worked from Mattel and they worked from home and they worked on computers. So it was very, my dad was very like tinkery with computers. So he would basically help me like, if I wanted a computer to all music, he'd be like, okay, let's just like download some stuff illegally. Cause also my dad doesn't care about authority. And so like a lot of people, my first forays into punk were like either the CDs I got burned from my friends' older brothers,
Mhm.
which was for me two albums, which was Operation Ivy, Energy, and I guess the other album would be, I mean, the Sex Pistols. I mean, that's so silly,
Yeah.
but I went out and bought that like a Tower Records in San Francisco. And so I guess those were like my two weird references, which is like so insane. But then, you know, all the stuff you could download. So I would download Ramones. This was when I was like 13, 14, and I didn't know what album was what or what song went on what. And I think it's just so funny to think now that's how all young people are. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, it's just it's all just on the streaming. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I definitely was like immersed in so many possibilities of punk rock. And when I was first coming into it, it was like the first one that I heard was I believe was a burn CD from my friend Britta's older brother. And I want to say she gave it to me during PE or after PE. I just remember something about that. And it was like such an explosion, the energy of the music, the vitality of the music. And then to realize that that was a band that came and went in like a year and in like 87 or something and
Yeah.
88. And I'm just like, oh my God. And then the Sex Pistols and going, oh my God, it's so vital. It sounds so energetic, so real. And so it's speaking straight to me and my angst. How is this so old? So I think just like, I don't know if I'm even touching upon your question, but I think I came from it from a sense of like, these are all windows out of normal life and out of whatever struggles you're going through. And I was a weird kid and everybody had their own struggles. I definitely was weird and isolated before I moved back. So I grew up in Southern California in Hermosa Beach the first like 10 years of my life. Then my parents had the great idea to move to a rural area on the central coast of California, surrounded by like 36 acres of land. I had no neighbors. I didn't have anybody around. And I was so lonely, especially when my
Yeah.
big sister went to art school. And so I was just like in my room playing guitar, like listening to these songs, and they're all windows out, right? So I just never really focused so much on like the genres, you know? And then when I became a teenager, you know, you go through your waves of like, I'm only going to listen to British Oi for like 6 months. And then you're like, okay, I saw that. And then you're like, okay, now I'm going to listen, you know? So like
Yeah.
so many music people, it's just, I just kind of gravitated towards what spoke to me, but it was always music that had a good hook, you know? Like,
Mhm.
I think that's the thing. I think a lot of new wave music does have great hooks and they're not afraid to wield them, you know?
Yeah. Well, actually, I always felt like
So
new wave was a lot more kind of experimental and kind of I don't know, very cerebral in a way that I just think went
yeah,
underappreciated in my personal
you're right.
opinion.
You're right. And I wouldn't put myself in the category of like television or something. I'm
Yeah.
thinking, I guess, more because the term new wave became just anybody with a crazy outfit, I
Hmm.
guess, back in the day. Like, so I'm like, oh, like Bananarama and like all this shit. Like, yeah, pop radio that the punk rockers probably thought was trash. Yeah, I do like that stuff. And I want candy and all that stuff. I mean, that was all, I know it wasn't actually new wave, but you know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
But I want to mention X really quick because that's my first tattoo. I got it when I was 14. Um, 14 or 15 at some guy's house. I don't even remember who. Just I when I found X, my so my parents divorced eventually, and I went back to Southern California, and I lived in Redondo Beach, which is same area as Hermosa Beach, and I was in a all-girl band called Ballroom Burlesque. and we were like all just going to Redondo Union High School and skipping class and making music and playing backyard shows and stuff. And that was around the time that no, actually I figured out, okay, so I heard about X from my guitar teacher when I was like 14, 15. I was learning those songs. But then when I went back down to Southern California, I was in my teens, I had the opportunity to see bands like X because they were playing they were still playing, and like they'd play the Sunset Street Fair. Like I think that was a free event. Like X was like very much like the pride of LA.
Mhm.
And I had played the Billy Zoom guitar licks, and I, eventually got a Sparkle Gretsch to kind of mimic him. And I love Billy Zoom, but I didn't quite understand like X until I came to LA, and I went, oh my God, like the poetry of it all. And like walking around Venice Beach and thinking about Exene's lyrics and thinking like, I was like, this is so amazing. I'm a writer. So I really, really, really connected to X, and it's still, I would say like one of my top favorite bands.
Mhm.
So I just want to like mention that because I just love X. And like when people, oh, we don't sound anything like X, but when people say like, oh, there's some similarity in some things, I'm like, we just have like a guy and a girl that sing sometimes. But I love X. And I don't know what category you'd put them in, but early LA punk was so like multifaceted. You could have X, and you could have like Stray Cats, and you could have Alice Bag, and you could have all these different people, and it was like somehow it worked. So
Yeah. Yeah, I
I don't
used to
know.
love when I was like a teenager. I like through YouTube I discovered like the New Wave Theater, and I remember just like watching that. Like it was like the old I don't know if it was on public access. I don't know where it aired, but it was like the syndicate show. So you see like Fear, and then you see like I don't know, like Dead Kennedys, or you see like early Bad Religion, or you see like and then all these like other new wave acts that I didn't hear of, just like kind of in. It was like really it was a really cool thing to kind of see. And then, obviously I think like once kind of hardcore took over, this is the history as I've heard it, like everything kind of became a bit more kind of like uniform, and kind of a lot of the
Yeah.
experimentation kind of got driven out, unfortunately. It's like
Yes.
but it's like I think like it's so cool how like that music still kind of like
Yeah.
resonates. And I was wondering through your time, I mean, like obviously you would have sort of seen like the resurgence of sorry, the sort of the rise in popularity, say like pop punk in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
And and now I
I
think there's
remember
kind of
buying like the guitar magazines that had like the tabs in it, guitar tabs, and learning like Blink 182, all the small things like from the guitar magazine. You mean stuff like that, like all the Green Day
yeah.
and all that shit? Yeah. Yeah, that was always in the ether too. I feel like, but that was stuff that like you everybody kind of knew about, you know? So it was
Mhm.
like this underground punk was so much more enticing to me. But yeah, like I definitely resonate with all of that stuff. I mean, you can't pick the water that you're born into. Like you're just swimming around, and like you just pick up all of this stuff. Like Screeching Weasel was just so random in my journey because I only found out about them because they were on Lookout Records, and I was like, oh, there was this label called Lookout Records. Okay, like let's check it out. And I was like, oh, wait, what is this? And then I was like, oh, these lyrics are absolutely insane and easy to play on guitar. So I would learn Screeching Weasel, but I would also learn Black Flag. Like, it's just yeah, that was, I think they're still such a, I love them. They're totally an influence. So I love them. I love 90s pop punk. I don't give a shit. I don't care. Anyone says it's really fun music.
Actually, when you kind of like listen to, I always really liked when I was a teenager, like the kind of the bands like like Adolescents and Descendants, who were kind of able to take the
Yeah.
melodic aspect into hardcore music, because I love
Yeah.
the kind of intensity of like hardcore, and kind of like I had just like when I was like a teenager, just had like a really shitty attention span basically. So the idea of just having
Yeah.
like listen to like the Circle Jerks or something was just perfect for me, because like it was just what I
Totally.
needed at that time. And then
Yeah.
obviously as I kind of grew older, I became like a lot more appreciative of kind of more sort of experimental styles of music too. But at the time, it's like I just needed that. But like I really loved it,
Yeah.
like the Adolescence
And
first album and Milo Goes to College and all
yes,
those.
yes. I was gonna say that totally stands up. And you listen to it
Yeah,
as an adult and you're like, we're literally like 15 and 16-year-old kids. And like, oh my God, the hooks. Oh my
yeah.
God, the depth. Oh my God, like not overthinking it and writing incredible songs.
Yeah.
My punk band magazine, Dirty, that my husband and I had before the Crushers, got to open for a version of the Adolescents,
Mhm.
which was very cool. And it was just fun to actually, for us, it was just fun to hear those songs again sung in a live setting. And I mean, I'd seen Adolescents before in Southern California, but that was a really big thing because yeah, I mean that record was so It is so good. Like
Yeah.
it's such a classic. I 100% agree. I think that's a really great example of something that could be dismissed as like teenage, like you said, like short attention span. These are short songs. There's not much to them, but there actually is quite a bit going on. And as an
Yeah.
adult, I'm like, how do I even dumb myself down to do shit like that? That seems really hard. Like, how do you fucking do that? I would love to learn that.
Well, with those bands, like as was mentioned, that's like I think really, the bass lines on those songs are just insane. Like the copy, like I
Yeah.
think anyone who thinks like punk rock is like really simple or anyone can do it, it's like no, listen to those tracks and emulate that.
It's hard. I mean, anyone try to write poetry? Poetry's hard because
Yeah,
you have an economy of words. In punk rock and a country music too, you have an economy of chords and of what you can do in that style. It's the
yeah,
constriction that makes it so hard, but also such a fun puzzle.
yeah,
I will always want to write. I'm like working on a country album right now, but like I'm always gonna want to write these like more punk forward songs. As punk as you can say we are, we're not really, but pop forward punk,
mhm,
melodic punk. I'm it's a great puzzle. It's so
yeah.
fun. 100% agree.
I think it's cool like that you don't have to kind of like really kind of marry yourself to any label now. Everything can things can just exist and there's going to be an audience for it. And I think it's really great. Like you don't have to actually it kind of touches upon kind of what your recent song's about, but you don't really have to be kind of married to any kind of like scene or any kind of like I don't know, any kind of expectation of what to sound like. I was wondering just like, since this project has started, I mean, how has your kind of like listening habits change or have they changed? And if so, I mean, how do you find that kind of affects the kind of music that you want to make?
Like since when? Like since
Well,
recently or
yeah,
since
as
like
well
what
since the band's lifetime.
since the Crusher started?
Yeah.
How has it affected me?
Well, I was just asking, like, have you kind of like been I mean, I assume like during that time you've been discovering new things. I mean, have you been
Yes.
incorporating things
Oh, I
that
see
you're
what you're
listening to
saying.
now that you weren't listening to back then? Sorry, I explained that really badly.
Yeah, I guess I get it. I mean, if you listen to some of our covers, like we did a Kim Wilde cover that's such a 80s quintessential pop person who was not big in the US very well. I guess Kids in America was big, but
Mhm.
it like I think I started to pay more attention to because I came from a punk rock background and I knew that I guess I knew that I had a love of radio, 60s and 80s radio in me, but I never identified with that and I kind of felt like it was dorky or not cool. And I think through the Crushers, just the whole experience, we've been a band for several years now. Just reclaiming like my love for that music that I grew up with that was always on the radio, always on the oldies radio, and feeling like reclaiming like that it's okay to like incorporate that stuff and not feel like a hack, I guess.
Mhm.
Like going back and listening to the Shangri-Las or listening to um trying to think of like like a Pat Benatar. Like my song Taboo is very inspired by Pat Benatar. So I mean, not to say I don't listen to new music, because I absolutely do, and I'm a fan of lots of new music, but I think for the Crushers, we've always had this like retro future vibe. And I think it is just like you could just spend your whole life um kind of just experiencing all the things that have been made before your time. And I
Yeah.
don't know why I'm so obsessed with that, but I'm sure it has something to do with like I collect old typewriters. I'm very into going vintage and thrift shopping. I like old shit. So I don't know. I guess I can take a lot of inspiration from the past, and I've just allowed myself to do that more and not feel like hokey or like weird about it. Because at first
Yes.
I was like, oh, like this is weird. Like I don't know, like I like on its face it seems kind of like you're just ripping stuff off. So I don't know if that's your answer, but that's my your question. But like, but I do listen to a lot of new music, and I do appreciate like it doesn't like some musicians I feel like can be very like weird about listening to music, or like they don't want to be like influenced by it or inspired by it. But I
Mhm.
I don't know. I think everybody's totally picking up everything in the air all the time. So
Do
what are
you
you
think it's
gonna do?
also important to still attend shows? Because I know like you know, yeah, in I think 2 years ago, you and your husband moved to your husband, who I should mention is
Yeah.
also the bassist in your band,
Yeah. He goes
moved
by
to
Dr. Kane
Dr.
Esquire, or
Kane Esquire.
you can call him Reed Kane too, but he gets a kick out of being called Dr. Kane Esquire. It's really quite annoying. But yeah, we moved to Detroit. Yeah.
And how did you find the kind of I guess the scene there compared to where you were in California? Actually, where were you living in California before moving?
So so for San Luis Obispo, California, so
Mhm.
that's SAN, new word, LUISOBISPO, San Luis Obispo, California. It's midway between Los Angeles and San Francisco on the coast. Very
Mhm.
sleepy town. And to make it easier for your purposes of your interview, like that's also kind of like the county where my parents moved up to, and it was very rural. That's so there's two locations for me. It's like Southern California, South Bay, which is at Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach, and there's SLO County. So coming back to SLO County in my early 20s, it's a great place to dry off and cool off after being in an environment that might be a little bit unsavory. And I definitely
Mhm.
lived under the stairs in a punk house, and they called me they called me the troll because I lived under the stairs. And I was like, okay, I need a break. I had gotten my degree from my journalism degree, and I was like, this
Yeah.
is not working for me. I was in my early 20s. There were a lot of drugs going around at that time that were like scary drugs, and I was just like, yeah, I need a break. I need to come back home. So I went back home, and the thing about San Luis Obispo, and I hate to like disparage it, but like there's a very much like a white wine like a white wine and reggae crowd, or like a white wine and bluegrass crowd. And that's like, oh, that's fine. It's wine country, whatever. It's surfing and it's wine country. It's like, it's very chill, bro. And so, there isn't the scene. I wouldn't say I found it energizing, but, and it kind of it never really was. I mean, maybe 10 to 12 years ago when we were first starting like our punk band magazine Dirty, it was like there were more punk bands, and there also we had a great venue in town where the big bands of the day, like we got to open for Jello, and we got to open for the Adolescents, all these bands, because they would stop midway from San Francisco to LA. Well, that went away. So it was like an okay scene. There was a DIY scene. I had a zine for a couple years there, and there was like a really cool like alternative country scene, bluegrass, and like some punk bands. But most recently, when we moved from there to Detroit, that whole thing had dwindled away. And a lot of that has to do with housing prices start at $800,000. It's like
Jesus,
living
yeah.
in like fucking Berkeley or like Santa Barbara. Like it got really fucking fancy. So there is still that wine crowd. So, but all this to say, like I'm totally crowding the point. The point is I lived in Southern California. I was living a fast-paced life. I was going to shows every freaking weekend. I was seeing legendary bands. I was going to Hollywood and seeing bands from Europe that like I never thought I would see reunite, because that was happening a lot. And like, and then I wasn't making any music. I wasn't doing anything with my life, like creatively. So I needed to move to a sleepy town, move into my dad's basement for a while. And from that, I owe so much to that area because there was not so much going on. So it made me want to create my own fun. And like we just put out record after record. And that wouldn't have happened if I was like, in a chaotic environment. So to answer your question, from where we recently moved from, where the scene had kind of died away, all the artists have been pushed out, to here is like night and day. It is like going from like why am I thinking of like water so much, but like it's like the hot tub to the pool. Like I'm thinking about water really a lot right now, but it's a lot. It's incredible. To
Yeah.
answer your question, and we can get more into it if you want, but like it is incredible, not to disparage where we came from, but like when you go to when a place becomes very, very affluent and fancy and white and it's a bubble, it's really up to you to either like own up to it and say, yeah, I live in this hellhole, and like that's kind of fucked up, honestly, or go someplace else and be like, no, I'm gonna like maybe risk not having a great audience at first, but I'm gonna be surrounded by diversity. There's gonna be queer and drag artists involved with the scene. There's gonna be zines, and there's gonna be cool showcases and amazing. There's bands here that use props, like Cult of Space Skull uses these beautiful props that they make from hand, and like all that shit. Like I was so floored. And like that's obviously why we came here. So like night and day, honestly. Yeah.
Had you been
I'm
to
sorry, my answer's so long. I'm so
No,
sorry.
no, not at all. No.
Okay. I don't know how we got like so roundabout with it, but like, I always hate like disparage where we came from, but at the same time, it's quaint. There's like, to explain San Luis Obispo, we have a bubblegum wall that's been there since the 1950s. We have a drive-in movie theater that's still in operation. We have little cute fishing towns. Like, it's beautiful. It's a wonderful place. I hope that it never like goes away, but for an artist, it's really can be difficult,
Sure.
really difficult.
One thing I was going to ask, I mean, about like obviously Detroit, I think has like such a, like I would say like there's an argument to be made that that's where kind of like punk rock started in a lot of ways. You know, when you look at like the
Sure.
Stooges and MC5 and the Straw Monsters and
Yeah.
Death and just like all the kind of proto punk bands. I mean, I think it really gets overlooked when people talk about like New York and London and LA as kind of being like the progenitors for punk. I think like Detroit obviously, has is a real contender and probably should,
Yeah.
I don't know, be considered. But my question was like, was part of that, um, because I was reading an interview that you did and you were saying like part of the reason for the move was just to kind of be in proximity to more cities, and it was easier in the Midwest to kind of
Yes.
be closer to different cities so you could have kind of a more versatile
Yeah.
reach. I was wondering why
Yeah.
why Detroit in particular versus say somewhere like a Chicago or somewhere.
Well, we were on tour in the Midwest, and we'd already decided the Midwest people are fabulous and friendly and wonderful and not stuck up.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh my gosh, we love the Midwest. We already knew that. We had a drummer in Detroit that kind of introduced us to just the beginnings of our touring in the Midwest. So we knew we liked the Midwest, but it wasn't until we came to play. It was actually a place near where my house is now in Detroit called Outer Limits Lounge. And we played that little venue, and just the stories that I heard about people being able to own their own homes, being able to start little cute venue, like cool venues and do their own thing. That was really inspiring to us because we thought, oh my goodness, like you don't have to be a millionaire here to have a stake in the building of something. And we saw that there could be a place for us to get our hands dirty. And I don't want that to sound like, oh, we're gonna come in and change things. It was more just like, oh, like people are creating the scene here and they can. And it's not like you have to have, so much, you have to just have gumption, you have to have like grit to live here. And that's what we had. So we were like, okay, this is the place to be. After playing a few shows here and seeing also the incredible enthusiasm for shows on weeknights. Like that sounds simple, but the fact that you could go out to a place like Smalls, which is also near our house, which is a wonderful bar we love. Like you could go on a Thursday or Friday and like you're going to see like an amazing band and great opening acts. They're all local. You're going to see female fronted things, acts. You're going to see it's just like that vibrance was so beautiful. And my husband grew up, he experienced the punk scene of the 90s in Oakland. He's 13 years older than me. And so he was around when like Rancid was becoming big and all this stuff, and like he was involved in different warehouses and that whole building of that community. He didn't build it, but he was part of it. And so he saw that in Detroit in his own eyes. He was like, okay, I can kind of see like the rents are cheap. People are getting their hands dirty doing new things. They're creating what they want to, they're creating the thing they want to see in the scene, whether that's like an art space, an art gallery, or even non-traditional venues like having punk bands at a bowling alley, because there's
Mhm.
a great bowling alley called Garden Bowl here that has great punk shows that are, there's no stage and it's just
I would
punk
love to
shows
go
and bowling
to
alley. It's like,
a punk show at the bowling
yeah.
alley.
So it's like exactly. So I mean, I think I'm painting the picture. It's just like more that sense. And so for us, we were like, okay, we could actually see ourselves actually affording to be here. And then we were just honestly, we were inspired by everybody else that we saw. It was not even about us. It was more like we were inspired by what other people were doing. And that encouraged us because we're like, in California, especially where we were from, you'd have to be a millionaire to literally do the tiniest like thing, because like everything, you step outside your front door and you have to pay like $50 to live. And, it just, that's how it feels
Yeah.
to me. I don't know, it just felt that way to buy, to buy an avocado or something. It was just like, oh, like everything felt so hard. So that's why. And will we stay here forever? I don't know. Have we completely like integrated into the community? Probably not. Like we're still working on that and like but we are going to shows, we are meeting people, we are supporting our friends' bands or going to these cool spaces that are, you know, that are open to so many diverse artists. Like that is, I can't say that enough. Just the diversity is
Yeah.
fucking amazing. So I guess that's why. I mean, the history of Detroit is beautiful too. That all that history is still there. You can look around and see it. That's pretty cool. Um, yeah, I mean, you can't deny the history of Detroit.
Yeah.
I would never put myself in that category. And like, I do think proto punk is one of those things where, like, there are bands in Detroit that definitely are still doing that, and it's cool. It's cool. They're playing really loud. They're playing really fast, kind of sloppy in a cool way. Like it's like ferocious and fun, and the vibe is great. And like I don't know where else that's happening, but it's still happening here, and
Yeah.
it's too loud for me, honestly. But I feel like the little sis, I very much little sister energy. I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
feel like I'm the little sister in Detroit, just like, wow, what a cool energy. Like I know, you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
just it's cool to be amongst that and the legends of this place. Like I'm fine being in the shadows of like the Supremes and everything. Like that's fine. Like it's just great to be here, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, no, and it is great to hear that that Detroit is still kind of like maintaining city. I mean, because like yeah, obviously, we were just talking about pro punk, but Detroit Rock City, of course, the connotation. It's great that that's still
Yeah,
kind of existing. There was something there I
it
actually wanted
is.
to talk about.
Yeah.
Um, you kind of just like sort of briefly touched on it, but you were mentioning kind of the kind of inclusivity of punk rock now, and you were mentioning one of
Yeah.
the things you were mentioning was drag artists. I had a question for you regarding that. I was thinking back to kind of like the 70s and 80s and punk rock, and people would talk about, if you had like dyed blue hair, you were like a target for like harassment and abuse. In a lot of ways, I
Yeah.
feel like, and I know again, like I'm not American. I'm like looking at this from the outside in, but it
Yeah,
seems like
where are you from?
I'm from Ireland.
Oh, yeah, yeah, okay.
And yeah, and when I was like looking when from what I see looking in, I was noticing that there's like a lot of kind of conservative dogging on drag artists recently in regard to
Yeah.
drag time story hour, which we have over here, but it's not as popular. But um, again, we've like I'm not being sanctimonious because we deal with like nut jobs too regarding
No,
that.
for sure.
Um,
Yeah.
so
We
I was
just
just wondering, I
yeah.
mean, do you find that like kind of is of a similar lineage in the sense that, people kind of talked about how kind of punk rock sort of got devalued once the fashion kind of became appropriated by mainstream culture, and blue hair dye, for example, and mohawks and so forth became like
Yeah.
a trendy, like became a trend for a while. It was in vogue. I was wondering, do you
Oh
find
yeah, I was totally on that. I was Hot Topic all the way. 100%.
do you find that
What's your
drag artist
question?
is the new punk rock, I guess?
Oh my gosh. You mean like it's not cool anymore?
No, I'm not saying it's not cool. What I'm saying is that people are still I guess what I'm trying to say, sorry, I'm really bad at formulating my
No, no,
thoughts.
it's totally
Um,
okay. It's totally okay. I'm just trying to
what I was
understand.
what I was trying to ask was do you think that like, the idea of like people becoming accepting of other people's means of expression or means of dress
Yes.
and how they present themselves in the world really in 40 years hasn't really changed, and people are still kind of I guess really scared of how other people
Mm.
express themselves.
Yeah. And I think coming from a place like California that is so liberal, we were surprised. Like, I hesitate to bring this up, but I probably should. In the past, I hadn't. But then I'm like, no, this is doing a disservice to the queer community. I should bring this up. We've had many drummers, by the way. So you can't pin on this on one person. You won't know who it is. But we had a drummer locally in this area who we had on the band for a bit, and we were asked to play the Motor City Pride Festival, which is like a huge honor, especially for a band who's new to town. And the organizer, Alex, was just really kind to ask us, and we were like so thrilled and just like, yes, yes, absolutely. And that drummer was not cool with it, and he was a young person who was into music, literally was a music teacher. I wouldn't call him a punk rocker, but he was like obviously into like art and expressing himself. I don't know what his inner issues were with it, because we disassociated pretty much
Mhm.
immediately. But yeah, there's still that. And it is still very prevalent in our entire country. And even though I was in a bubble in California, it is still, it's everywhere. And we need to be really careful about that and call it, I hate to say call it out, but like we need to highlight that and not let that squeak by. There's also a boys scene or a boys club that still exists in many of these communities, and that also is being broken down, and it's hard for female fronted acts still, and it doesn't do us a service to just say everything's fine now. Like the drag queen story hour is a great example, because you can't think of something with less teeth than drag queens telling kids stories. Like that's like literally like Barney and Friends. Like that's the nicest thing that you could think of.
Yeah.
And I think it's so illustrative of, like you said, there is this fear and this ignorance that is so activated by the idea of these abnormal or non-normal people, whatever, integrating into like our daily lives as Americans. And that is, I get it. Like it makes sense. Social change is really scary, but we have to be at a breakthrough at this point. We have to like, I feel like there's a sense of like, for instance, I live in Detroit proper, but I'm on the border of Detroit and Hamtramck, which is a small borough inside of Detroit. It's very strange. If you look it up, it was a Polish community, but now it's Muslim. It's the first majority Muslim city in North America. You can look it up. Look it up. The city council's all male, Muslim. You hear the prayers. I hear the prayers and the church bells at the same time, which is kind of maddening. But they banned pride flags on city property here. And the community, the arts community, the punk rock community, the queer community all came out from Detroit, from this neighborhood, as well as like greater Detroit area, and said, no, this is not okay. Like you can't ban, a whole group of people from showcasing like literally for just Pride Month. It wasn't allowed. And I've heard of people having bricks thrown through their windows. And actually, I've heard about maybe 3 of these occurrences. So there's probably a lot more than that. And this is all because they had Pride stuff up. So not to like harp on it, but yeah, this is something that it just doesn't help us to not talk about it. Like we do have to bring it up. And that is why I really appreciate the fact that Detroit has this like part, like this integration of like drag, performance art, also racial diversity, a lot of racial diversity, where I feel like I've been in spaces where like things are segregated in this weird way, and to come to Detroit and see that there is this like not equal playing field at all, because that's never going to happen, but like just this sense of like we're all Detroiters, that has been incredibly healing and beautiful. And like I don't know, I think like Detroit is a great place to look at when you're looking at like how is social change, like how is it working? Like it is working here. People are showing up and they are actively engaged in like changing the status quo. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm answering a question, but it's definitely still alive. It's still here. Sexism is still rampant. Like you have to just be really strong and call it out and be like, this is what's happening, and be vocal. So I don't know.
I don't want to harp on too much, but I would like to just ask, just briefly. I mean, like, I think we have seen a lot of like reactionaries in the punk scene. I find it kind of ironic because, punk was about kind of social change and kind of questioning societal norms, and obviously, I think conservatism is about preserving those societal norms. So I was
Yeah.
wondering, like, well, you mentioned kind of like your own personal kind of interaction with seeing that firsthand. But in general, what do you kind of make of the idea of people kind of clinging to punk rock, or people calling like Donald Trump the first punk rock president, or these kind of things like.
I don't know where you're hearing that.
Oh,
I think
I that was on Twitter. That was, well, to be fair, it was people on left-wing Twitter kind of making fun of reactionaries. So that's where I saw it.
like are you talking about
So it was kind of MAGA people were kind
libertarian?
of, yeah, well, libertarians, but also like MAGA people. There was like a lot of there was this slogan that went around for a while that said conservatism is the new punk rock. Their argument was
Oh my
that
God.
their argument was that Trump was so anti-establishment that he was punk rock.
Right. I think, well, I think it's great branding. I think everything about Trump is great branding and great entertainment. It's unfortunate that the downfall of our whole country and democracy is so entertaining. It's unfortunate. I wish it wasn't entertaining because it is. It's like it's hard to take your eyes away from it. But
Mm.
I think that there is a very large amount of disenfranchised people in this country, many of them being young white men who have no outlet for their anger. And some of that has to do with maybe not being raised with the idea of like showing your emotions. There's some toxic masculinity in there. I'm not saying boohoo for them. They're responsible for their own actions. But I think that there's just a very large growing population of young, frustrated white men who see a country that once belonged to them. It was like their birthright in their eyes. And that has been completely taken away. And that's great. It should be. It absolutely should be for far too long that they've been the center of literally every story ever told and like every song and every movie and every book and every hero. And like even just the fact that women weren't allowed to vote until 1920, or that the civil rights movement and things like discriminatory housing practices in America was happening up until like basically the 70s. Like that's crazy. Like it's crazy. So I think we're just on this really long trajectory of like change, and there's going to be growing pains, and like we definitely are seeing that, and it's sad that it sometimes infiltrates into like these art spaces, but I don't feel like I feel like these people that are like that you're talking about, they're like Donald Trump is the next punk rock. Like I don't really
Mm.
see them creating like anything besides tweets. Like I don't really see like where's
Yeah.
their music? Where's like I don't know. Like is it alt-right like hate oi music
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something? Like I don't know, but I think it's kind of it says something that they don't have heart to what there's no heart to their community. It's all hate, and like that's only going to divide people. So I don't think it's like gonna win. I think love is always going to win.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's stupid. I think what you're and I have a bone to pick with the people that wore Donald Trump's mugshot on their shirts that were
Hmm.
like, yeah, like they thought it was cool. Like, God damn it. Like you can't give us one thing. Like we finally got him, and you have to make it like it's cool that he was, some like martyr. So annoying. But
Yeah.
what can you do, Just have to keep trying to like just focus on what you do want, not what you don't want, because you have to just keep moving forward. It's maddening. Living in this country right now is maddening.
Actually, one thing I wanted to ask, kind of based on that, was you're mentioning people in queer communities and in art spaces, kind of using the shows and using the spaces afforded to them
Yeah.
to kind of um to share their life experience. And I one thing I find actually is that punk rock in a lot of in recent years, I found this become very, I think, didactic, in the sense that you can go to a show and you're just enjoying yourself. You're there for a good time. You're not there for a lecture, but you get informed while having a good time. I was wondering, do you find
Yeah.
punk rock can be, or just like, not, I keep using that term, but just like kind of alternative music scenes or creative spaces can be a good means of informing people of life experiences that they themselves wouldn't have, in a way that doesn't feel, I guess, overbearing or preachy, or I don't know how to
Yeah.
describe it.
I see what you're saying. And I do get what you're saying. And I think I have a weird take on it that's kind of millennial, like female millennial. Like I don't know. Like I think it's just how I see the world. But like I have always felt like joy and mutual like art experiences and energy and like being in a room full of good music and art and creative ideas is like it's like a political act. Like joy is a political act in the sense that in order to get to a place where you can affect change in the world, you have to be at a place where you can affect change in your life, which means you have to have the self-confidence, the self-love, and the community to do that. And these art spaces whether they're populated by, trans people, or they're populated by someone's old punk rock dad. We have a lot of fans that are like cool punk dads that are like older and they bring their daughters. Like, it's cool. It's all the same thing. I feel like having spaces where you don't feel alone is in itself so incredibly valuable to the human experience, like at a base level, that anything else that gets thrown on top in terms of like political, like learning what's going on in the world, or like shattering beliefs, or like whatever, is like a cherry on top. That's how I feel. And it's like a very like self-care bubble bath kind of vibe, but like that's how I see punk rock. And the only times that I ever have a bad time at a show is when I see any violence or things like that that are like so antithetical to this idea that like, no, we all came here because we're all weirdos. We all kind of don't fit in, or we are all searching for something to kind of like, complete our weird DNA. Or maybe some of us have chosen family and our families rejected us. Like, I'm not saying that happened to me, but like it definitely happens. Like that's what it's for. And then if you can on top of that learn, like, even just by experiencing, oh, I see this a great trans artist is like kicking ass and like expressing themselves, or I see like, I don't know, an older person on stage. I'm not used to seeing like an older person on stage and they're doing a great whatever, like, or the lyrics themselves are political, like just being in that experience, like anything on top of it is just like, ooh, that's like an extra perk. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how I feel. And I know, like Dolly Parton says, like, figure out who you are and then do it on purpose. And I feel like we are here to bring joy. And I don't dock myself for not necessarily being explicit in every political idea, or like being on the right side of history, because I'm like literally not even thinking about that. I'm thinking about like, how do we create maximum good vibes in the room, which that's just what we are here to do, like our band, this project, right? So that's how I feel about it. And it's almost sounds spiritual. It is. It's like a spiritual experience to go to, a punk show.
Actually, I totally get what you're saying about that kind of like
Good.
communal experience of a punk show, and the kind of familiar aspect too. I was wondering, like, actually, do you find that that's kind of exemplified in the label you're on, Kitten Robot? Because, like, you have like TSOL, Paul Rossler, Kira Rossler, Josie Cotton, but you also have like newer acts like yourselves, like Loki's Folly, like Velvet Starlings. Do
Glitter
you find
Wizard.
Yeah, yeah. Do you
Yeah.
find that like that kind of exemplifies the kind of um punk attitude that you enjoy
Yes.
so much? And what was it about Kid Robot that kind of attracted you to join the label?
It's funny because I definitely had the intention, like it was 2020, and my Vintage Millennial had just come out, and like we had a great show. It was like one of the best, like good vibe, like album releases, and then COVID happened. And I remember writing in my journal, like, I need to manifest a partner to help us. Because I was so sad. I was so sad about what had happened, and the fact that we wouldn't be able to tour on this album. And it just felt like it was hard for everyone. Everyone's dreams got dashed at that time. And I kind of put out this call to the universe, like, I'm looking for a partner to meet me where I'm at. And like Kitten Robot has the same energy, in the sense that it's really, really, really all about the music. It's not about the money,
Mhm.
and it's so much about um joy, um weirdos coming together and creating cool stuff. Paul Rossler is amazing. He's got such an incredible history in the LA punk scene. um there's something about Kitten Robot, I guess maybe because of its founder being Josie Cotton, who has been around for so long, and she has had experience in the mainstream label world, and that had kind of not a great experience.
Mhm.
um like there is something about this partnership we have with them that is like beyond like trends. It's more just like, we all are like, we're here for this, we're down
Yeah.
for this. I don't know, like they're like, the fact that they have this wonderful studio in LA, and like we just get to go and record there, and we're just like, cool, we're just recording here, cool. Like I think a lot of that is Josie, her generosity, but you know, there's so many label experiences you hear about that are such nightmares. And like, this is absolutely like about passion and love. And like, I don't know where the future of it goes and like who else they partner with or where everyone's going to end up. But like at this moment in time, and as the music industry is changing and we're all watching it change so drastically, it's very comforting to know we have like a group of people that have a wealth of experience of decades, including someone who was on who worked at Triple X Records. And like having that has been like very comforting, especially during COVID times. So I don't know. I love them. I feel like they're going to be iconic to LA. I mean, and they're such a new label, but I think they're doing really amazing things. So and I guess the way it happened was like I manifested it, and then you know how when you think about something long enough, you just start seeing it. So I was like, oh, I really need a partner. Like I want somebody who can back us up and like give us advice and produce us. Like I wanted a producer really bad, which is something that little bands like us don't get. Like you don't get producers. You can't pay people to give a shit. Like you
Yeah.
can, like if you have a lot of money, but nobody really gives a shit about your music. And I was like looking for that. And so when I stumbled upon Kitten Robot, which just I probably came up on the internet or something, I wasn't searching for them. It just like came up. I went, oh my God, Josie Cotton has a record label. Oh my God, Paul Rossler's like producing. And it just made me feel like, oh, like I think these are people that would actually, you know, give a shit.
Yeah.
So I was right. So that's kind of how it all happened. And it was like a Zoom meeting, and then like we had brunch, and then it was just like, okay, now we're a part of the fam. So it was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, really cool.
And I don't want to take up too much more of your time. You've been very gracious. I just want to plug your EP that's coming up. September 10th is the date I have for Unsubscribe from the Underground. The recently you released
Yeah,
a single that was just called Unsubscribe. I was wondering if maybe if you could talk about like the concept behind this EP and kind of what it is you're trying to get across with it, I guess.
I guess like the song. So we recorded this EP half in Kid Robot Studios in Los Angeles and half in our lead guitar player's basement in Detroit. And I
Hmm.
feel like that's how it sounds. And I love that. I feel like it reflects where we're going as a band and like our new territory and like our new stomping grounds. It reflects us moving forward with some new band members as well. Like our new lead guitar player is new. This is the first time we've recorded with him, and he's on the EP. Our drummer Gabe is like our new drummer. So shout out to Ryan Delicio and Gabe Masek. Like they are amazing. And what was I gonna say? Okay, so anyways, it's like that. So I feel like that is cool, and I love that it's like showcasing where we're at. But like as far as the song goes, the song, I mean, it's a little bit of like spite in the sense that no matter what I do or whatever we do as a band, like we're never going to be accepted as punk rock. And like, I get that. Like, it's just how it is. It doesn't matter what our pedigree is, what our credentials are. It doesn't matter. Like, we are not of what the modern punk, like what the old guard thinks is punk is like dying out anyways. They're never going to accept us. And I think there was a little bit of that. But my curiosity was like, what if I wrote a song from the perspective of a person in the music industry or like in a underground scene that feels high and mighty? Like, how do they feel? They see new people coming in and trying to change things. And like, they must feel really some animus against these young people, these other people coming in. And I just thought like their story is kind of more interesting than my story because like it's this like and it's just interesting to sing from that point of view. And like where we are in punk in 2024 is it's literally not a thing. Like the punkest people I know are like young kids doing something that haven't even heard yet because it's so cool, that has nothing to do with guitars, drums, or bass, and they are so punk. So it was kind of like that, and like that's why we decided to call the album Unsubscribe, or the EP Unsubscribe from the Underground, because uh it just feels like permission, and just like you don't need to sign on to any dogma, you don't need to sign on to any like I don't know validation from external sources. Like believe in yourself, like do your own thing. So that's kind of where that came from. But on the other side, because we are the Crushers, not every song is in that vein, and it's gonna surprise you. Like we have a song that's kind of like 60s girl group ish, and then we have a song that is I won't even get into it. I'm just like not going to talk about it. So
Okay.
like it's surprising, you know?
Yeah.
And I think we came out of a kind of a hard time with moving cross country. So I'm just really proud that we were able to scrape together this amazing group of people. I'm so grateful. We recorded like a lot of this drums and tracking in my guitar player's basement. And then had the pleasure to go to LA and do vocals with Paul and have like the great production on that side of things. So I don't know. I think it's like a step, it's like an adjacent step. Like I don't think
Yeah.
we're stepping forward, we're kind of like stepping adjacent to our last album and just being like, this is where we are now. And I don't know what the future holds, but here's like a little snack for now. And yeah, like please take anything and unsubscribe from the underground from with a grain of salt because yeah, I'm not mad. I'm not mad at anyone. I don't know. I guess I wrote it for anybody who feels a little bit like they don't fit in with the in crowd or the out crowd. And that has
Yeah.
always been how I felt. So it's for them.
You're too punk for the rest of the world. You're not punk enough for the punk world. Yeah, I get
Oh, yeah.
it.
Well,
I guess one final
yeah.
thing I just wanted to ask now that you have made the move,
Sure.
how do you find like because something I picked up on and I don't know I could just be reaching here, but you were mentioning in San Luis Obispo,
Yes.
a lot of it seemed kind of untouched from like the 50s and the 60s, and there was obviously
Yes.
the kind of retro futuristic aspect to your music. I was wondering, do you find that geography and location affects the kind of music that you make, the kind of or just even the themes of the songs or the lyrics? And if so, how do you find that Detroit has kind of changed your perspective or kind of changed
Yeah.
your creative output?
Totally. That's such a beautiful question. You ask such great questions. That's such a
Thanks.
conceptual. You're so conceptual. Like it's really fun to just play in the sandbox of ideas because it's like very rare. Usually the questions are so much more literal. Like I love this, by the way. It's like so it tickles this part of my brain. So thank you. But I think if you were to like draw a graph like from our proximity to the ocean to, you would probably the farther out we went from the ocean, you'd probably see more aggression and more angst. And the closer we are to the ocean is like a lot more breezy. And I think absolutely, yes, like wherever you live, you're absolutely going to like it's like I said about like you don't know what water you're swimming in. Like you don't even know how much it's influencing you. And to be in a bubble was such a beautiful thing. And like I think a lot of our earlier songs have an innocence to them that's like very sweet and I'm very proud of them. But it is like this idea of kind of an alternate universe where the drive-in never closed and you can still go get like chili dogs and that was my life in some ways. But there's a whole big world out there and I have to grow up at some point. And yeah, I think putting ourselves in a position that we have to basically be like knocked down and to just face whatever life brings us here in this very different environment is it's all just like growing pains and putting ourselves in that position intentionally as a band is really exciting and I think the music will reflect that, but that's up to the listener to decide if it does.
Yeah,
But definitely.
perfect.
Definitely. I think if you're an artist and you're not and you have no change in wherever you go, you're probably like a sociopath. like like there might be something going on there. Like if you're that
Very
unmoved by
insular.
your environment. Yeah. But no, we're not like I promise we're not gonna like do like an MC5 like jam, like super jam, like loud. Like that will never be us. We're not cool enough. Like that's not happening.
Yeah.
We'll leave that up to like the awesome like modern garage like MC5 loud fucking bluesy rock bands that are all here. Like let them do it. They look great in their tight pants and they're doing it. We're not even trying to compete. No way.
Perfect. Thanks very much for your time, Ellie. And is there anything you'd like to
Oh,
add before we wrap up, or?
no, I guess just yeah, that we have that EP coming out and is this coming out like at any particular time?
I'm gonna try and have it in the next few weeks. I don't have any
Okay,
particular
cool.
time,
Um,
please. If you have
just
anything you
oh yeah,
need to push forward.
you wanna yeah, I mean, hey, I'm not your editor. I don't whatever you want to do, but if at all, like if it does come out and like there's any tour dates or show dates that are like happening still, like feel free to add them to the end of the story. Like we have not played a lot of shows this year. We are playing New York for like the first time pretty much in June, and that's exciting. And like I just I want to like get people to come to our shows.
Oh, cool.
Um yeah, so just more of that, and then like just if you want to shout out my bandmates, the current band is Ryan Delicio, and you can find his name online. I can send it to you. Gabe Matt Masthek. I say his name weird, but it's a German name. I know how to spell it, but I don't know how it's actually pronounced. I don't think I've ever said his last name before. Dr. Kane Esquire on bass, and then obviously I'm on rhythm and vocal and stuff. But I just wanted to make sure that they get, if you do throw their names in there, I do want them to be credited, because it's really cool to have like a new group of guys, and I want them to feel like we appreciate them and not just like leave them out of it completely, because we couldn't do it without them. Like we like my husband and I are very much like of the mentality of like we're songwriters, and so we need like good musicians to make the songs happen.
Okay.
And we're lucky that good musicians want to work with us, because we're learning still, if that makes sense. So keep that in mind. And yeah, just I'd love to learn more about you too. Like you're in Ireland.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I've been doing
So
this for
cool.
yeah, I've been doing this for about 3 years, I guess. Music journalism.
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah.
I love that.
This.
How old are you?
I'm 30.
You're 30. Okay, I thought you were like in your 30s. So you do remember like some of that
Oh
early
yeah, yeah.
downloading.
Yeah, I remember
Totally.
a lot of things getting mislabeled. So you never really knew what you were listening to. That's something I was thinking of when
Yeah.
we were talking about like the Ramones, and I was like, yeah, what if it wasn't? You'd never know really. Because that was an interesting period
Yeah.
because it kind of like predated like Wikipedia or something, you know.
Sure. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Well, I really enjoyed talking with you. You had such wonderful questions. So like anytime you want to reach out, I'd be happy to chat with you, and let me know. I'll promote whatever whenever this comes out, and wherever it comes out, I will promote it.
I'll try
So
and get it before the New York dates anyway. What?
it's
No,
okay if
if
you can't.
what day is it? Are you playing New York?
That's gonna be the first weekend of June. We're playing a
Okay,
festival in New York.
cool.
So yeah, but if not, it's totally cool. It's always nice to get them out there.
Yeah.
Shout out to the venues. We just play so few shows, and hopefully one day we will get over to Ireland and Scotland, and not Wales probably, but maybe
No one ever goes to Wales.
I'm Welsh, and my dad says that's where all like the sheep fuckers of Europe live. I'm like, oh my God, is that like a rumor?
Uh,
Like they're like
yeah,
the
that
like
is kind of
hillbilly.
yeah. There's a lot of zoophilia in Wales.
My God,
that's the stereotype.
that's just it's a
I
derogatory
will
thing.
admit
Please don't do that.
I've never actually been to Wales. I'm sure they're all lovely. They're very
Okay.
nice. They're
Yeah, well,
very good singers
yeah.
actually. Lot of great singers come from Wales.
Interesting. Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
mean, if I had
the
to search
Ophelia
my
thing
ancestral
is a factor.
shit. Oh my God.
Not that I'm
So my
accusing
dad
you.
wasn't. No, no, no. It's like if we go to Europe, I feel like now I have to like search out my ancestral homeland and just be like, yeah, or the UK, and just be like, or wait, are you European? Wait, what is Ireland? You're
Yeah,
totally
so
independent.
yeah, we're a republic,
You have
and
your
we're in the
own
European
money.
Union. Yeah, we have the euro currency, so it's like the
Oh, you
European
do have the
currency we
euro.
use. Yeah,
Okay.
so
I thought you
yeah,
had like your own, like you were like, no, we want to keep our own. Who has their own
no,
money
that's
still?
well, there's a few countries that do. The UK were one of them. So the UK is like its own country, and
Okay.
okay, so this is like this is this
I'm
is
just
like an
curious. I'm
addition
like
of it.
such an
No, no,
ignorant.
no, no. So 32 counties in Ireland. Six of them are part of the UK, so they are part of the UK, and the other 26 are
Okay.
an independent republic. So I'm from the
Okay.
republic side, which is in the European Union. The six counties to the north are not in the European Union. It's a political mess.
So they're probably like and they're probably all more radical or something, or more like, nationalistic or something.
I think they're all lovely.
Oh wow. It's so interesting.
It
I
is.
really I think it's cool too. You have an outside perspective. So I do appreciate like your questions about the US, and like it is, I forget sometimes that not everybody is in this situation. So
Oh no,
yeah, I
American
appreciate that.
politics is affecting ours too. We're seeing like a lot of American talking points and enter our kind of electorate over here too. Unfortunately, it's like, oh my God, but like you can always kind of tell because like some of the stuff they talk about is like kind of irrelevant to
Yeah.
domestic politics, but it's just kind of like they're just repeating the same talking points, and it's just like, okay, I don't see how that's
Weird.
relevant.
Like people should not be quoting us. We're like basically grunting and like we're like not even forming words or sentences. We're just like whoa, whoa, ah. Like we should not be fucking doing any of that. But yeah, I really appreciate your questions. It's great meeting you. And if you need anything, just let me know. I'd be happy to like answer any other questions. And yeah, if you do music, send me yours. I'd love to hear it if you do it.
Thanks very
You
much for
sound
your
like
time.
you do music.
I
Yeah.
do. I don't pretend to be good. I did a self-recorded demo. Well, what happened was I was freaking out about turning 30, so I was like, I'm just gonna get this like demos of stuff out but I don't purport to be a musician. But
I love it. No,
I
like just
play
let
music. I think.
mortality inspire you. That's
Pretty much, yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah. It's
I love that.
everything's a document that you were alive. I think everything that you do, it's just proof that you
Oh
were alive
yeah,
at one point. You
that's
know.
right. Well, I do hope you continue with that. That's amazing. I figured, I'm like, you know so much about music, you must do music. Otherwise, I don't know. So very cool. All
Thanks very much for your time
right.
and enjoy the rest of your
Yes.
day.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to that episode of Post-Burnout.com interviews. We're an independent venture run by yours truly, and as I said at the beginning, liking, rating, subscribing, and sharing really helps us out a lot. If you're feeling extra generous, we do have a PayPal donation link in the episode description, but don't feel obligated, of course. We've also begun releasing occasional exclusive episodes on Spotify, so subscribe there if you'd be interested in hearing those. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.